Golbat, one of my least favorite Pokemon. Brock's Golbat, probably my least favorite gym leader from Kanto. And in Prop 15, which was previously one of my most hated formats. So why am I doing a Prop 15 Brock's Golbat video? Well, because this deck is fucking fun. It's all about that Spiral Dive, so you can start using this attack on turn 2 if you can get the DCE out of your deck early enough. But it does 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon. It's a pretty simple spread damage attack, about as simple as you can get, right down to the energy cost. Even Dive is a decent cleanup attack for 1 energy. But even for Prop 15, 10 damage per Pokemon per turn is still a pretty slow way to get any knockouts at all. That's why you line up some Fossil Gengar on your bench, that way you can move at least a couple of damage counters per turn, start working your way towards some of those larger knockouts. Plus Gengar has no weaknesses, and Dark Mind is a pretty decent attack for late game when you're trying to clean up a lot of those extra knockouts. Plus a few other Pokemon in this build that do contribute towards spreading around some damage, getting some ultimate big KOs, and we'll get into that right now. Let's look at the deck list. And we're going to start this deck list off with Fossil Gastly, which in its own right is an amazing card. Free retreat, no weakness, resistance to fighting, great 1 energy attack, and 50 HP off of basic is not bad at all. So we're going to be running a Prop 15 playset of those, 3 copies. And then we have Fossil Haunter, which in its own regard is also kind of an underrated card. You don't get an HP boost, but it's still got the free retreat, resistance to fighting, and a Pokemon power that can help stalk and help buy you some extra time as you're getting your setup. And then finishing off the evolution line with Fossil Gengar, which is going to be your means for getting a lot of knockouts with this deck. As you're spreading damage around, you're not going to be able to get a lot of consistent KOs, but with the help of a couple of Gengar set up on your bench, you can move those damage counters around, get the key knockouts, and knock out the threats that are on your opponent's side of the field as needed. So the faster you can get Gengar on the bench, the more Gengars you can get on your bench, the better off you're going to be, because that allows you to move more damage counters. 3 copies of Brock's Zubat, which is a little more fragile with only 40 HP and a weakness to Psychic. And there's a lot of Psychic Pokemon in Prop 15, which may be another reason early game to want to start with a Gastly, use Fossil Haunter's Pokemon power to help dodge some attacks, and get a little bit of setup done. And with a Fossil Haunter or even a Gastly out in the active position, you'll be able to free retreat into a Brock's Golbat as soon as you get it evolved up on your bench. Also including Brock's Mankey in this deck because its taunt attack can be pretty helpful for trapping an opponent's Pokemon in the active position. Maybe something with a really high retreat cost like a Kangaskhan or a Lickitung. That way it's actually buying you more time to just use Spiral Dive turn after turn and start building up those damage counters across all of your opponent's Pokemon. And stacking 10 damage at a time is a bit of a slow go, and so we do have a couple of sweeper cards in here, being Jungle Mr. Mime, to where those pre-existing damage counters are really going to be effective for Mr. Mime, as they are going to boost its Meditate attack. And then the final Pokemon that is in this deck list is Lickitung, just an all-around great Pokemon, which also can help stack 10 damage at a time, especially if you need to stall a little bit. 90 HP, resistance to Psychic. Of course, I'll just stick Lickitung into any base Fossil or base Gym deck just because it's so useful. It's such a great utility Pokemon. As for the trainer base, our draw power is going to be coming from 3 copies of Professor Oak. Because there are so many different Pokemon in this deck, you want to ensure you have the right evolution cards on the right turn that you need them. That way you can boost efficiency. We've also got 3 copies of Pokemon Trader, just in case you end up with a handful of Mankeys and you really need those Haunters and Golbats. Another backup, just for pure search power out of your deck, we're going to have 3 copies of Computer Search, because this deck does rely heavily on getting those evolution cards as quickly as possible, starting your Spiral Dives on turn 2. So if anything, you can always just drop a Computer Search to get a double colorless energy out of your deck. Going to be running 3 copies of Erica's Perfume, a very sneaky trainer card because your opponent will pick up on what you're doing with Spiral Dive. Spreading around all of these damage counters, and if they've got some low HP basic Pokemon in their hands, even something like a Mr. Mime, they're not going to want to play those to the bench because they know they're going to get knocked out in 3 or 4 turns. You can force those Pokemon onto their bench with Erica's Perfume, or even if you're using Mankey's Taunt strategy, maybe they're hanging on to a Kangaskhan or something in their hand that they don't want trapped in the active position. Well, you can force them to play it. And the energy curve for this deck is actually pretty low. You're only going to have 1 energy on a Lickitung, only 1 on a Mankey, none on a Haunter or a Gengar, 2 on a Mr. Mime for late game if you're cleaning up. And so super energy removal just makes sense. You're going to have a lot of these just one-off energies, like your 3 copies of Potion Energy and your 3 copies of Full Heal Energy that later in the game you're not going to need. You know, if you have just a Mankey sitting on your bench with a Full Heal Energy on it, it's not really doing anything. So go ahead and use a super energy removal just to stall your opponent even longer. Start dealing with those threats so that your Golbats aren't knocked out. Again, the strategy is just going to be Spiral Dive over and over again until all of your opponent's Pokemon have a decent amount of damage counters on them, so you can come in and use a Dark Mind or a Meditate and just start getting knockouts turn after turn after turn and really just sweep the entire game all at once, but with a lot of build-up, of course. Just go ahead and get it out of the way. Yes, Fossil Muck really messes with this deck. It slows it down a lot. It doesn't stop its strategy at all, as it's not really doing anything to your Golbats, but it does affect your Mr. Mimes, making them very easy to knock out. It affects your Haunters, making them very vulnerable with relatively low HP, and keeps your Gengars from moving damage counters. And so Muck is just a no fun allowed card across formats. So if anything, early game you may want to use Brock's Mankey to taunt a Grimer or Muck into the active position, because most decks that run Muck don't run Grass Energy. It's in there just for its Pokemon power, and it does have a retreat cost of 2, so it may be strategic just to trap the Muck in the active position and use Spiral Dive. The other big threat is going to be Promo Mewtwo, which is all over the place in Prop 15. It's going to be able to OHKO your Golbats, so if you see a Mewtwo hit your opponent's bench, you know to go ahead and get a Lickitung ready. This is where your Mr. Mimes are also going to come in. You can stall it out with one of those Haunters as well, but Mr. Mime and Lickitung are going to be your defense against this particular card. And that Mr. Mime is also going to be a huge player when you are up against these high HP, high damage, high efficiency decks, individual cards like Arcanine that are going to be dealing massive damage very early in the mid game. And these decks are really hard to deal with because they will gust your Golbats and your Gengars off the bench and just OHKO them, which leaves you pretty high and dry early game and really makes you have to strategize in how you're placing cards onto the field. If you are finding yourself up against a lot of these big Prop 15 evolution decks, then it may be worth it to include a 1-off or a 2-off of Promo Mew just for Devolution Beam. Because if you are thinking about these high HP evolved Pokemon like Blastoise, Venusaur, Arcanine, Blaine's Arcanine, Blaine's Charizard, odds are you're not going to be able to knock out a Bulbasaur, Charmander, Growlithe early game. You know, you're not going to be able to stack damage that fast before those cards can evolve. But you can use Promo Mew to devolve them into lower HP Pokemon and get knockouts that way. So if you're not as in love with Lickitung as I am, you can replace them with Promo Mew or Promo Mewtwo, because in its own regard, it's a great late game sweeper, and it's going to help you deal not only with Grimer and Muck, but also other Mewtwo's. And honestly, one of the reasons I didn't include it in this deck list is because every other Prop 15 deck list I've uploaded that has even a hint of Psychic Energy in it has had this card. So thought I'd mix it up a little bit by just chucking in some other stuff. So as I say in every video, let me know what you thought about this particular deck list down in the comments. Let me know what changes you would make, or any stories you have running this deck at a tournament or some such. And leave your request decks or any, format popular decks that you think I've overlooked. Again, I keep coming back to Arcanine Muck as such a great Prop 15 deck, yet I still have yet to upload a video about it. So if you'd like to see that, let me know. Social media links are down in the description. And I will see you guys next video. Bye.